I'm very excited to talk to you today. We have already seen amazing state-of-the-art lighthouse projects during the last 2 days, which are very promising and exciting perspectives. But today I'm going to take you on a different journey by inviting you to take the point of view of a smaller cultural heritage institution, for example, a local village museum with little available resources. And due to the growing pressure of digitization and open access demands, all cultural institutions increasingly face the need to extend their presence into the digital space. And this was, of course, rapidly accelerated during the COVID-19 pandemic. And with the transition into the virtual realm, new and larger networks of information can be generated, which would not be possible within physical boundaries, bringing forth new opportunities for computer-aided mediation and research methodologies. So this poses, of course, also a major challenge, especially for small institutions, which often lack the financial resources and know-how to adopt sustainable digital strategies, particularly concerning data quality, long-term storage, and visibility. So the collection of such small institutions might not be fully inventoried, and the knowledge management system might neither be standardized nor machine readable. So I will talk about low effort digital strategies that can be applied by institutions of any size to show, and I will showcase open source opportunities in application, while also developing a cohesive institutional strategy that can be adopted with little resources. So first I will talk about strategies, then some determining factors, and then I will present you some of the opportunities. A strategy is a cohesive response to an important challenge, and a digital strategy is necessary to represent the institution's values and therefore to create a united image of all institutional activity, whether it's analog, virtual, mixed, or augmented reality. So it argues for a holistic approach where all activities are aligned. So first of all, to develop a strategy, we have to diagnose a problem, for example, that the use of the digital means are not up to date or non-existent at all. And then to address this problem, we have to follow the guidelines. So we take a look at the institution's values and mission guidelines, and then we can formulate a response to that. I'm using an example from the National Museum of Sweden, and their mandate has 3 pillars: to preserve, make accessible, and help build knowledge. So now when we take a coherent action, we can follow this. And for example, what the National Museum of Sweden did, they published about 6,000 high-resolution images of their most popular paintings into Wikimedia Commons. So this is an example of how to address a problem, follow the guidelines of the institution, and then take an action. So as we just saw, the mission or the strategy, the institution determines all the actions in the digital space, so the guidelines. So the question arises, why is there a need for specifically a digital strategy? So digitization is often presented as a rupture or a sudden change that institutions now have to deal with, especially after COVID-19. So this is neither a helpful point of view nor historically accurate. The link between cultural heritage and computers is closely related to the development of the latter and has been applied and researched since the 1960s. So the first conference, Computers and the Potential Applications in Museums, took place in 1968 in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So about 20 lecturers discussed for the first time the possible applications for computers, in particular the potential and their difficulties for research. So digital methods have a long tradition in cultural institutions. Therefore, a more useful or profitable approach would be a post-digital one, which describes the moment when digital media and technologies become more normative, more precisely that they were inherently integrated into the strategy of the museum and not seen as something additional or external. So normative does not mean that it's actively implemented in all institutions, but that the digital has been logically and instrumentally integrated into the motivations of some individual museums, which show in an exemplary manner how a uniform strategy can be implemented. So it's not meant to be ignorant of the fact that the digital does pose a challenge, mainly because of the media itself. So the technology is constantly evolving and rapidly changing. So therefore, the approach needs to be agile, supervised, and re-examined more often than other business processes. The point is that the digital is not just simply marketing or a communication tool, it's an extension of the museum, of the space. It's a place for experience and storytelling. So a dynamic approach and mindset is more productive, and the digital is not just a project, it's a long-term investment. The goal is a holistic approach, as I mentioned, and it should go more through the community point of view instead of the collection and the object. It should focus more on the audience or the public, so they can engage and interact with the collection and therefore gain more visibility. And this focus should be on the values of the institution and not just adopting a specific technology because everyone else is doing it. So determining factors, I have separated it into 4 categories. First of all, of course, the heart of this is the digital collections, the knowledge management, and that can be in different or varying states depending on which collection or which institution. So first of all, it needs, of course, to be inventoried, then it needs to be put into a computer-aided collection management, then to be able to process the collection. So we may have to think about lifecycle management, so we can add value to the data, and also about linked, open, usable data. I will come back to that, of course. And then interfaces, so we can aggregate it into or disseminate our collection. And then we can actually use this for online collections, digital archives, and then to gain insight, we can apply computational methods to it. So I will come back to this, don't worry. It's just to showcase that each institution is somewhere on the spectrum and not everyone is at the state of the art on the right, and their collection is not ready for computational methods and things like that. So the other thing is the digital disposition, which is an important determining factor, because sustainable digital change can only be brought about if a fundamental willingness to change exists or can be developed in the minds of the staff, the curators, and there needs to be an ability to change. And they also need to be able to see the objects, not just as object, but the collection also as a data set. So I found very interesting that the Historical Museum of Basel published a new strategy, and they specifically said that the employees are open to new ideas and changes. So this open disposition is actually anchored into their strategy, which, yeah, I found that really interesting. Then, of course, digital literacy to create consistent input for machine-readable databases. So there needs to be a standardized ontology, so we need standardization. Everyone needs to be aware of the data, so we can have machine-readable databases. So this is another important factor. And then, of course, the audience. So there's more and more there's a trend towards democratization. I wouldn't call it a trend, but yeah, to open up your collection, because, for example, the Manifesto for Museum Learning and Engagement says that collections belong to communities, and without the people, museums are just storage warehouses. So collections are for public use. So the digital presents a great opportunity to do just that and to open up the collection. So for every project, it needs to be analyzed who specifically they want to reach with the project and identify the different groups. And the more precise this is, the more successful the project will be. So now I will talk about some opportunities. And again, I separated into 3 groups, no data, small data, and big data. So first, no data, I defined it in the fact that there's no standardized or usable database. We have to clean the data first, or you have to input the data first, but you can still create a digital outreach or extend your presence into the digital space by, it's mostly just a one-way stream by the experts. So the curators, the staff, they use their means that they also use in the analog world. So their static curation, static content, and born analog storytelling. And we transform it into videos, into podcasts, and then put it on their website. And it's mostly addressed to the public, visitors, school, and researchers. And as an example, this time I'm using the Museum of Culture in Basel. It's a kind of smallish museum. And they published a business report in 2019. So another company looked at the museum to kind of establish this business report, and they found that there's a high level of inventorization, but not a high level of the database. So it's not cleaned, it's not standardized, and so on. And also the digital literacy and dispositions are improvable, and they have a great audience in the community, but that's mainly analog. So in terms of digital, they only have one social media position, which was fixed term, and they only have one digitorial, which was part of a research project. So it's not even by the Museum of Cultures directly, it's funded by the research project. So there's no consistent long-term efforts, and there's a lack of a digital strategy. So this Octovi, who did this report, they told them they should formulate a digital strategy, and that's exactly what they did. So now we take a look at the progress to 2023. They relaunched the website completely to make it more contemporary and user-friendly. They launched a virtual museum where they did exactly what I was talking about. They used their content that was analog-born content into the digital to create videos, guides, podcasts, even for children, which was very successful. And they even give insight into the current research project, which shows that every person involved is actually now doing something in the digital space. So they're all involved into this project, and it's not just one person that's in charge of social media anymore. And also their virtual collections is steadily growing. Right now they only have 80+ objects, but they do have a browsable online collection available now, even linked with videos and metadata. And they are now working to standardize and clean all the rest of the data. And meanwhile, one can download those inventory PDFs, and they are published. So they are really going towards open data. So we see definitely a visibly higher digital literacy and a digital disposition. And they successfully expanded the community outreach into the digital space. So now they created some data, so small data, and that offers new opportunities. And now they can start to think about opening up this one-way stream of curation into this two-way stream by creating dynamic content and storytelling, which is mainly that, for example, you can filter the digital collection so the public can engage with the collection, and do other interactive things, because now we are at the start of getting some data, which also means now we have to address the issue of linked data or linked open usable data. And in this case, I want to show or talk about especially the International Image Interoperability Framework, IIIF, and which opens up a lot of data silos and can connect those, because it creates the interoperability, even though they don't maybe have the same data standard, which is really nice. So they work, it's a very large active community with open APIs. And for example, if, So, for example, this manuscript is in a different institution than the image that was which was taken out. So both are IIIF compatible. So in the virtual realm, we can now get them back together. So they are in different institutions, different databases, and with IIIF, we can now combine them again, which is really nice. And once we have established that, we can also disseminate the data into aggregators, and Europeana is, of course, one of the biggest examples. But I want to also show you that in the Basel country where I live, there are 45 local small historical museums, and they were pretty much unnoticed by the public, tourism or educational institutions, and they of course didn't have online collections. So they bundled their resources, they shared their know-how, and together they had the funding and the know-how to create a digital database. So now they all share one database to protect and represent the regional cultural heritage, and they also forward all the data to Europeana. And now there are over 105,000 objects, still counting, so this is still ongoing. And you can see that all the institutions, the museums that are participating, which are sometimes really, really small. And now they have a visibility, and therefore, these aggregators are a great opportunity to share the collection with few resources, even though if you bundle together with others to create or establish your own network. Then when we move towards big data, as I said, now we open up this two-way stream. So the mediation can also be executed by algorithms, by the public researchers, and as methods we can allow for citizen science, distant reading, democratization, and so on, and especially now dynamic curation and dynamic content, because we have a lot of data to work with. And an example here, so yes, this again, now we are all the way to the right. And as an example, I wanted to show you the open source project, the Vicus Viewer, which it was developed by the University of Applied Sciences in Potsdam. And it was a research project. And now, as I said, it's an open source application. And it allows to input big data, and then it sorts it on a timeline or by similarities. And you can also click on the keywords to further search through them, which is especially nice for research purposes, but also for interested public communities. So this is also a big data possibilities, and you don't have to do your own research for that. There are already paths taken that one can adapt. So in conclusion, very short, I argued to adapt a post-digital point of view to see the digital as an extended space to apply storytelling and mediation method. So it's important to involve everyone in the staff in this extended space and to share an open mindset to constantly revisit strategies because of the dynamic and agile nature of technology. So one doesn't have to be on the high risk and expensive state-of-the-art research side of the spectrum to create an engaging digital experience. There are also some safer and tested roads one can follow. So even with little available resources, one can still work towards a sustainable machine-readable collection database to work towards open data and democratization of the collection, all with the goal to gain more visibility, engagement, and also to have it available for everyone. So I hope I could inspire you a bit maybe, and I'm looking forward to your questions.